I like to talk about practical AI and scrappy innovation because I find that's where I just get a lot of interest from YPOers around the world is, do we have to be a tech company to do this kind of thing? So a little background on me to give you some context before I talk about this stuff. I am a technologist. I've been in the technology business my entire career, except for when I started by jumping out of helicopters in the Marine Corps. I was a self-taught engineer, had to figure out something to do after that, and wound up inventing a technology in BlackBerry, and they had bought all my patents and company in Palo Alto. Then I spent the rest of my career really bringing high-tech to low-tech industries, sewing thread, garments, different kind of components. My career is really solving business problems with tech. I'll tell you a little bit about the company I'm doing now to give you context in a bit of our example. I have an AI big data company called Build Club. We actually started the company doing same-day delivery for building materials. And we realized that there were three stacks we had to do this right. One, we had to get technology so we could pull all of this data in on where we could buy things, how much there would be, and source it. Two, create the e-commerce. Three, do last mile delivery. Along the way, we realized that those second two pillars really weren't worth that much, but required the most capital to grow. And because I have 50 YPO investors, they're like, hey, why don't we just focus on the data, which is what we've done. So we've really transitioned the company for selling data. And this kind of data is in quite demand. As a matter of fact, my first day here, we had a call from in New York who wants to use our data for their financial analysis of all the companies who sell building materials and tools, in addition to folks like Home Depot and others. So we discovered a few anomalies when we started looking at data. And that is, I used to think, say for a Home Depot, that it was like a McDonald's, a Big Mac's a Big Mac. But we discovered quickly that wasn't the case. That in fact, there's some significant variation between those retailers alone, and they're big, right? These are companies between them and Lowe's that do $250 billion a year in sales, have over 300 million customers, do 2.6 billion transactions a year. And we also noticed along the way that building materials are very difficult to align. And this is where the AI piece comes in. A piece of plywood at one vendor isn't necessarily the same as a piece of plywood from another vendor. You can't tell. There's no UPC, there's no barcode. Is that piece of 5-ply plywood the same from A to B? So we use AI to do that, and I'll talk a little bit about how. So the other anomalies we discussed along the way is the massive variability on availability of materials. There are instances where all of Arizona would go dry of insulation, and we were able to see this happen in real time. And at the time when we were delivering, it created great opportunity. We'd send tractor trailers of insulation from California to Arizona because we knew builders needed it. They had to pass inspection and finish their track homes. So it creates a great deal of insight that becomes very valuable in the space. So how do we do this? We scan everything off the internet, as you might imagine. We scrape 3 million items, if you can do the math in your head, in over 2,000 stores, and we scrape multiple metrics from those items. And that comes down to about 12 billion records a day. So it's a massive amount of data we ingest in these systems. We toss them all into a NoSQL database. And for those of you who don't know what that means or aren't familiar with it, it's a different way of storing data, almost like a blob. You might consider it a tree of information under topics. And the reason we have to do that is there's significantly different facets between a piece of wood, which might be the width, the dimension, the wood type, and say a drill set that has voltage, speed. There's no way you can break all of those components out into a single database if you want all of the data. And when you look at the data structures themselves, this is how it looks. So disparate products and components can look very different. So we use the data style on the right, at least initially. So we take in all of this material and then we start to apply AI. And we start to apply a couple of different technologies so that we can determine that plywood from supplier A is actually the same as plywood from supplier B. We use a bunch of different methods in going through this, and I won't bore you with all of the details, but many of these are available, and I'll show you how we do this online. We do one process of what we call vector embedding. And Josh talked a bit about this, and that's the ability to break apart the words themselves in the descriptions and names of the products into numbers so that the computer can understand it and look for similarity. You're probably familiar with this again from imagery. We spoke about this a bit earlier in the week. So that the numbers find patterns. And again, most of you have probably seen this in machine learning and machine vision. When you use Google Glass or one of the Google Vision products, you say, okay, take a snapshot of this shoe. I want to buy it. And it finds it online so you can buy it. So it's a fairly well-known technology. So we actually put these two together. We do a process of vector embedding to pull them apart, but then we also use semantic search, which really looks into more about the intent and the natural language of the question. Are they really related, and not just the sentence structure itself? So we tie them both together because it winds up, frankly, a lot more accurate for us. So some of the things we discovered, like I'd mentioned along the way, these 2.7 billion transactions that take place. So we're like, all right, one of the ways we can monetize what we're doing with this data is, instead of driving people to our website, if any of you are familiar with Honey or Rakuten or other types of browser extensions, we said, let's create a browser extension. So there's 300 million customers who shop at any of these sites will automatically get a pop-up if we found a product cheaper somewhere else. In this case, a Home Depot at a different Home Depot store, or frankly, at a competitive store. And that type of value becomes really interesting, especially when Honey sold for $4 billion. So it's an exciting way to use this data, of which we can do many things with. Another thing we've done that I find super interesting, any of you familiar with CAD? In this case, we have integrated our systems with CAD. So with the touch of a button, we're able to output that entire building design into a bill of materials, put the bill of materials that are in that plan into a spreadsheet, break the spreadsheet out by room, and then price all of those materials from our database, which has never been done. Because today, if you ask an architect, how much is the material cost for anything they build, they have absolutely no clue. And of course, we're able to do that in every zip code. So these are the kinds of things you can bring with data, and some of the things we're using these tools for, and it just gets better every day. What are we doing? How are we playing with these? We certainly use Microsoft OpenAI, Google Vertex. We'll talk a little about AWS, and then Hugging Face. If you haven't heard about that, we'll talk about it and give you an example. In doing so, we've received $650,000 in free development credits from these folks. And all of you can do the exact same thing. So one of the things we'll talk about is, if in fact you're going to do some innovation in your business, why not innovate as a startup, build it as a standalone entity on the assumption you may sell to other customers, but clearly you're going to sell to yourself. And with that, you can market this to Google, Microsoft, and others and take advantage of these credits. And we'll talk a bit about some of the details on that. So with ChatGPT, I know these are a little difficult to see, but the focus here, we can be on developing your own custom GPTs. And within these custom GPTs, you can set your own tone and tenor of what you want this GPT to do. And you can use this continuously inside your business. Again, difficult to see, but you can add knowledge, you can add components, tell it what you want it to understand, give it instruction of what you want it to do. In this case, I uploaded the last 5, 10, 15 quarters, whatever it was, of the 10 Qs for Home Depot. And I said, I want you to only reference these 10 Qs when answering my question and tell me about their quarterly performance and their trends in net profit. So all of a sudden, I no longer, as an investor, and I'll talk about why this matters in the end of some investing I do, to create massive insights that normally would take analysts, frankly, days and days or weeks to go through and analyze. So there's many ways it can make you much more efficient in your business, or you create these GPTs for your own good. It could be your knowledge base for your customer service people. It could be anything. And they upload your entire knowledge base, and now your customer service rep just types in the question, hey, this customer asked me how I reset my password on this piece, and boom, GPT will give them the answer. So Microsoft has a fantastic platform if you haven't been there. This is their development console, and I'm showing these are our development consoles we use. So here the beauty is, and it's again a little hard to see because it's small, but I encourage you to go in and set up, try and join their startup programs and just start tinkering with this. Because you don't have to be an expert. It's super interesting on how you can adjust and get to all of the different models that they give you access to that you can develop on. And I think those you're going to certainly find super powerful to play with. And each one of these models will show you different components you can do. You can upload images, of course, you can prompt. Josh talked a lot about multimodal. We use that all the time. We'll upload images and components. We have about, I think we're now at about 190 million images for all of the items that we scrape. And sometimes we need to go through those or analyze those, and it's very difficult to try and do those as a human. So this is a fantastic tool. If you're going to develop on GPT, I suggest you take a look at this because this studio is super powerful. It also allows you to attach to data. So if you happen to have massive data you want to introduce. Ryan didn't get a chance to tell you about a story he did for his company where he uploaded all of the recorded phone calls with his customer service reps for 6-9 months and asked the GPT to find the trends. Were people angry? Were they not angry? What were most of the calls about? And that allowed insight into maybe they ought to put a different format on their bills when it goes out. Maybe you ought to notify everybody before trash day because they don't put their trash out, and then they blame you because you didn't pick up their trash and didn't realize you came by at 8 a.m. and not noon. So simple things like this, you can derive all of this knowledge out of those recordings. So another example in terms of images, being able to create playgrounds here. And there's just a whole lot of interesting things I think you can do. This one, so I decided to pick a model out of here, and you can really, let's see what I generated here. I wanted to create a watercolor of MIT. I said, please generate a watercolor of MIT I might use as a cover page for our event. And I thought it came out pretty good. So these kind of creative endeavors, I used to send out to contractors to build this kind of thing. Then I'd wait and I'd iterate, and maybe that contractor's in the Philippines again, right? Poor Philippines. They're going to have to find something new to do. This is the Microsoft for Startups page. Take a peek at these. These credits are real, and they're not that difficult. If you have a compelling startup website, fund your startup so you show some demonstration, have a nice 5-10 page landing page, have a bit of a business plan you can share with them and what you're trying to do with their technology. It's all about making money. Their ability to give you this gateway is key, and we use it all the time. Microsoft gives you credits for a year. They give them to you in 2 tranches. So you get a first tranche of about, I think they give you like around 45,000 or something. Actually, I think I show you my dashboard. So here you can see they gave us a tranche initially at 25,000. Once I spend 80% of that 25,000, they give me another 150,000. Now the Microsoft program looks a little different than Google in a sense that I have to use that first tranche within the first 12 months of signing up for the program, and I want to get to 80% probably in the first 9 months. Once I kick that extra 150,000 off, it's good for a full another year. Timing is important. And I'll explain why that matters because Google is different than that, which is what we're developing on now. And part of our goal is to move some of our calculation from Google to Microsoft to utilize all the credits. Why? Because we're scrappy. We're a startup. We want to make sure we're getting all we can. So let's talk about Google. So Google has some powerful platforms as well. There's some stuff, frankly, Google does a little better, and there's a lot of stuff, at least in our experience, that GPT-4o does a lot better. So we've had a lot better luck with our models working on GPT for many of the LLM stuff. So this piece here, you can see they have many different aspects to their platform, allowing you to look at video, speech, multimodal. Again, this is the development platform you'll go into when you set up your account. And you have access to all of these other models as well, so you can play with things and you can kick the tires. I will give you a little word of caution. They have now moved some breakers in their API access. We had an instance where we were running a script at nighttime Pacific time, starting at midnight. My developers in Ukraine set up. It started processing and there was a glitch in the script that was pulling too many of our records and was starting to bill us at about $15,000 an hour. I didn't discover it until I woke up and I got a PagerDuty alert that our database went down. And our database went down because my card stopped taking charges, my credit card, after 180,000, and had to realize that we had an issue. It took us 6 months, but we were actually able to get a credit back from Google because they realized they should have had some guardrails on this. But sometimes this stuff can get real expensive real fast, especially if you have a lot of data. So there are many interesting things. So here's the multimodal side. You can look at different models for video or for pictures, and frankly, and video. You can select whether you want a light model or you want a heavy model. I'm just running through stuff that you can play with here. And in this case, I'm asking it, and this is a pre-trained model, to take a floor plan and take a look at the floor plan, calculate for me the wall square footage for this property, and then tell me if I'm a drywall hanger, how much drywall I need to drywall the interior of this property after you subtract windows and doors. And then we're able to do this calculation, and you can see the breakout by room, able to calculate at how many sheets of drywall you need to complete it. So you can see some of the tools we're putting together for contractors that they'll be able to simply upload plans and get answers they need. So again, Google Cloud for startups. Check this one out as well. Worth the money. Just be a little careful how much you spend. So here's an example of my credits. So you can see now I have 150 they just dumped in there literally a couple of days ago, and I'm burning through the rest. So I have 12,000 credits in enhanced support and the other components. By the way, the other real cool part about the Microsoft program is, have any of you used Microsoft in your shop? Microsoft Office, this kind of 360, any of that? Okay. If you've ever tried to get a hold of Microsoft support, man, they usually suck, right? You don't get anybody, no one gets back to you, but you get in the startup program, they put you at top tier enterprise critical support. So I've reached out to support with random questions. Hey, I'm building this AI model. I had this problem. We had a couple of variables that didn't work. I literally got a call in 30 minutes with the 2 senior AI engineers. I almost fell off my chair. From a tech guy perspective, you never get that kind of response. And these people followed up. Hey, did you solve your problem? Can we help you more? We have another engineer we think is going to be a little better. So that side of Microsoft was amazing. On the Google side, what's really cool, they take a look at our spending. And right now we're spending, I think we're at like 30 or 40,000 a month. Right now they're looking at our spending and saying, hey, you guys look like you're going to be a pretty good account when you grow. We're going to invest in a Google partner to help you develop all of your solutions on Google at our cost. That's pretty cool. So not only do I get the credits from Google, but we'll probably get $250,000 worth of free development from a partner to not just transition what I've already created, because that's not such a big deal. We've already done most of it, to be honest, but to help us develop our next phase of technology. So we've had 5 calls with the CTO of that firm, and now we're working on putting all that together. Again, being scrappy. Now, to be honest with you, because you're a YPO crowd, we're working on engineering now to take my spend on Google from about 40K or whatever a month down to about 8. We're re-engineering some of our calls. We're using more advanced AI to try and update. We're not going to tell them that because we look like a bigger customer now, so we'll probably get more credits. But the beauty is I can afford to do it because I'm burning the Google credits while I'm doing it, where I'd hate to just be dumping cash out there until I can figure out the right algorithm. So these are the cool things about getting these credits and moving forward. And again, they could be available to anybody. AWS also has a startup program. They've backed off some of their credits. We did some stuff on AWS before, but I'm not so bullish. I don't find their AI interfaces as friendly. I think if you're a 100% AWS shop, it makes sense because a lot of the cost in using these models and data is in internet transfer data, right? So you have the cost of actually processing stuff on Google, going into BigQuery or AI or wherever on Firestore and doing your AI processing, your data processing. But there's even a bigger cost if you're taking that data and say using a Microsoft tool to process it, because then the stuff has to transfer the internet and that gets expensive. So you want to keep everything on the same platform and even in same region and same zone on servers if you can. Because even on Google, if you're in the same region but in different zones, you still incur a cost. And I know this sounds petty, but when you start it and you start experimenting, you don't want to get a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 surprise because you didn't realize the servers were farther away than you thought. So there's opportunities here, which I think are pretty interesting. So this is part of their Activate piece that you can get involved in. So it's something else you ought to look at if you're another shop. Anybody familiar with Hugging Face? I think there's some people out here who are. Yeah. So Hugging Face, it's a funny name with the meme, but it's actually a community of models. So if you don't quite know what you're looking for and you're saying, hey, you know what? I want to create a AI bot on my phone where I can take a picture of a dog and have it immediately tell me what breed it is. You can go in here, mess around inside here, and I'll pop into our account and find a model that does that. And the beauty about Hugging Face is you can actually demo the model right in the interface. You don't have to build anything. You don't have to import it in Microsoft. You can actually do it right here. So I'm going to select something here in a second there that will show you how this comes together. So you can automatically classify images. You can review text. You can do text to speech to text. It also shows you all the components of the algorithm, and all of this is available for license from the people who created it. So it's a fantastic way for you to go shopping and do some experiments with your data, depending on what you think you want to do. I just mess around with it for fun. So I drop this picture in, and immediately the AI knows what kind of dog it is. Now that's cool. And this is in the test platform, right? So if that's what you want, you would license this piece, you would download it to your mobile app, and within 3 days, you're on the App Store with a dog identification app. So how do I do this development? I do a lot of this development for people I hire on Upwork. Are any of you familiar with this company? Maybe a lot of you. But I have a particular hack that I use for solving problems, and I'll describe it for you. I crowdsource a lot of my R&D. Here's a post I put on Upwork, just to give you a little context. I was looking to solve a problem with taking my NoSQL data, why I described it to begin with, and flatten that data into a relational database so that I can use some BI tools to offer insight. Pretty much have a good idea how I want to do it, but I don't know what I don't know. I ask something very specific back here, and at the bottom you'll see, provide the insight on other projects you've done, the tools you use, and the methods you would suggest I approach solving this problem. Even if I don't hire that person to do it, I wind up with a massive education from the experts in this space from all over the world, right? And I get responses from everywhere on what they know. In many cases, I not only discover tools I didn't know exist because tools are changing daily, but I also discover other methods. I discover things people have done. So you can see this response, and we're not going to read it all, but you get a point that he's telling me exactly what he suggests, how to handle the raw layer of data. He goes down to describe how the ultimate solution may work best on Firebase, what might be the advantage of using a Google product or Tableau for reporting, and just continues into the detail. Tells me about row-level security and Looker. I actually didn't know Looker Studio had row-level security, so that was interesting to me. So I continue to educate myself on what's going on because I just don't have time to read. As great as the MIT portal is, right? It's difficult to find the solution to answers I have, so I do that. So it's another scrappy method I use for R&D that I've found super unique, and I've been doing it a long time, and I'll continue to do it. So other scrappy things for your startup. Any of you guys heard of Ramp or Brex? So these are new startup credit card programs. I use them. I actually use both for my company. One, they require no founder guarantee, which is fantastic. Two, they give you full digital control of unlimited amount of digital cards. Back to that Google problem I had with the $180,000. Here I can make a Brex card or a Ramp card, and here's Brex. I can make a card on one of these platforms, call it my Google GCP card, and have it max out at $5,000. And when it maxes out at $5,000, it shuts down. I get an alert. I know something's wrong. Maybe I spent whatever, right? So I allocate my credit card numbers to many different SaaS services that I don't want surprising me at the end of the month. Sometimes Facebook advertising and stuff, if we're doing it, maybe something went rogue and went crazy. Sometimes they do. Along with both of those, they give you a ton of credits. So you can get a lot of these credits. And as a side note, I'm working with YPO so we can start to create this type of benefit within YPO. I don't understand why my Platinum or Centurion card has better benefits than my membership with YPO. Right? Why shouldn't we have a YPO card that gets us into those things? We're working on that. And by the way, if you didn't know, we've already started. We have a YPO agreement with Sixt Rent-A-Car, where all YPOers get diamond status, which previously was almost only for the owners and family. It was something you couldn't achieve. And we've also done it with Iberia Airlines. We're hoping to do a lot more programs internationally and start giving discounts, accessibility, and other cool stuff to members like a credit card. The question to you is, should you consider doing your innovation in a startup? And maybe the answer is yes, maybe it's no. Another point I'd like to talk about, so around YPO, since about 2016, I've been doing a strategic investing talk. I don't play golf, so my hobby is public equities investing. And I, of course, apply these tools to doing that. I have no analysts. No, I'm not an analyst, but I hire analysts on Upwork. I do a ton of work, like I told you, with that YPO thing, and we've done quite well. I make a portfolio for every year that I pulled together these things. This is my portfolio in 2017. The performance for 18, 19, 20 are very similar and have been significantly above market. And what I really do is some of the topics that I focus on. This is from one of the last talks that I did. I do focus internationally on stocks. And I find along the way that it's just super cool to use these tools in many different ways. I track macro trends, technology trends, global view, focus, and I'm able to use and pull all of these threads in different directions. A recent thread I had frankly done is I wondered about air conditioning. I'm like, it's getting hotter, people more air conditioning, laws are changing in China with CFC and other carbons, and realized that there are only 5 companies that produce about 85% of all air conditioners in the world, regardless of what brand you buy from. And that starts to get interesting, right? When you start to see, okay, the world's getting hotter, more people are getting rich, more people want to have these air conditioning units, laws are changing. That's going to be a pretty good space. So I've actually invested in those companies because they're the benefactors of many of these trends. So the tools I use are here, and I tie them all together, and it really does a difference. So I think the result is really impactful, fast, and simple innovation. And the purpose I'm hoping to show, along with Ryan's piece, is, again, as much as we talked this week about just these wonderful things you can do, you could literally this weekend, before you fly out, if you're here a day or two, go home with a model of something you've tested with one of your problems, have built a 5-page website for the startup of the innovation you want to correct and pull together, and within 2 weeks, maybe have 300 grand or more worth of credits waiting for you to develop on. I encourage you to be scrappy, crowdsource your innovation, and really just go for it, because you'll discover you don't have to be a tech genius to make this happen. You just have to be curious. That's all I have.